Hey everybody, this is Bill Manning with Studio C41, and we are going to be testing out the Negative Supply 120 carrier that has gone live on Kickstarter. Alright guys, so what we're going to be doing, we are going to be testing out this new Negative Supply 120 carrier. It's actually really cool. The guys over at Negative Supply, AJ and Saxon, have let me use their prototype one carrier. Now, the only major difference about this particular device is that it is silver, but when the Kickstarter is complete, it will be a matte black, which is going to be very similar to the 135 that they currently have in place. So just a quick little heads up on that. Also, this prototype does not have the masks, so we are going to be shooting directly straight onto the negative, so there's going to be some extra space that's going to be associated with that. But just know that there will be masks that include with that. So we'll just do a quick little demo of it, and then I'll kind of dive into my experiences using it, and then maybe compare it to some other products that are out there. All right, guys. So I'm not going to get into the details as far as how to set all this up. This is a video within itself. There's a lot to cover with that. Just know that this is the equipment that I'm using. I'm using a Sony a7 III with the 90mm f2.8 G Master macro lens, as well as it being tethered into my computer. I'm using Capture One Pro 20, which is going to allow the tethering, and then I have Lightroom that's set up to monitor a folder that is going to auto update, so that way I can do the conversions in Lightroom. So that really is the only clean way to do that in Lightroom for Sony. So that's just how that is done. So if anybody's wondering, that's the answer. All right, so let's get on to here. So I have for my first negative here loaded up. All right, so I'm going to back out. I'm going to pull this negative carrier out, the pressure plate. I'm going to pull it out. So before we dive into it, what I want to mention is that this device has a pressure plate that comes up. There are magnets on here that will allow the pressure plate to come down to keep that negative on the 120 flat. The additional advantage of that as well is that when you have the masks that drop into place, you'll also have that additional pressure that kind of goes out across the entire negative. So that way, only what you need is going to be exposed. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this film here, and we're just going to kind of dust it off real quick. All right. Now, this negative has been rolled up for quite a while, so I think this is going to be a really good test capable of seeing what this negative is able to do. So this is a 6.7. This was shot with my Pentax 6.7, so we're going to go ahead and load it up through the front here. And you'll see on the screen here that I got the negative already kind of traversing across. And I'm wanting to kind of get this right in the negative, or right in the middle. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that pressure plate on here. So you can see this negative is already nice and snug. I haven't even wheeled it straight across. So we're looking at a really nice even negative here. So I'm going to go ahead on the computer here. I'm going to go ahead and capture the first shot. And so I do have a small delay on this camera just to minimize all the shake. So that's just kind of my workflow when I'm doing these types of shots. All right, so looks like that is working. Let's jump over into Lightroom really quick. There you go. So the negative, everything's starting to work in here. So we'll go through this whole roll, and let's go and get this roll all shot. So cue the time lapse. All right, guys, so that wraps it up for this. Now let's get into the review as far as the user experience on this thing. All right, so this is a very, very hefty unit. This unit comes in weighing at just under 2.5 pounds. I weighed it, it came out at 2.47 pounds. This thing is a hunk of metal. It is heavy. It's got rubber pads on here, and it is very sturdy. I mean, this thing is not a plastic 3D printed device. This thing is very sturdily built. What I really do like about this is the pressure plate. So there are magnets that are on here that are located here and here, and as you come closer and closer, the spring does try to pull away, so when you do pop it up, you get that assist that comes up, which is really, really nice. So now, one thing that some people probably have noticed is that this felt is coming up a little bit, and that is completely not part of this design. From what AJ and Saxon have told me, is that they are going to go with a different component. This adhesive was just merely for the prototype. So don't worry if you guys are going to be getting something that's going to be much different than this particular design, because again, I'm working with a prototype. So so one of the things that I really do like this, and we do see this in the 35mm version of this, is this rubber feet right here that helps pull the film straight across in here. I do like this design. It pulls it across and then it catches it. It does a pretty good job. I had some issues with some film that were really curled that just wasn't catching good enough, but kind of a little bit of finagling and you were able, once you were in there though, you're good and you're able to pull it straight on through. So I really do like this device. So one of the biggest drawbacks that a lot of people have been talking about is that this device is not cheap. Right now in the Kickstarter, the early bird is over. It was at $300, and after shipping $399, I believe. So $390. So it was just under $400. But once it's in production, this certainly will be a $400 unit, plus probably around the $420, $430 range. So I would say that this thing is going to be a lot of out. I'm going to say this is going to be out of a lot of people's budget ranges, and they've already been catching some bad slack about it because of the price, because there are other options that are available out there. And the other option is this, the digitalizer by Lomography. This is just one of several other components that are out on the market right now as far as what you can get. The Pixelator, which we haven't seen hit production yet, but from what we've been hearing from Hamish, it is another solution. The prices on those are significantly cheaper. But what I'm going to have to say, first of all, for this digitalizer, this has been used traditionally as a scanning mask to go with the V850 that's right back behind me. So originally this thing, I personally am not too much of a fan of, because while you do have the capability to pull strips of film through here, and you can see that there are slits on here to pull the long rolls of film through there. So it is a really interesting design. It does have magnets on here, but I find that this device to be a little too flimsy, and the negatives just don't sit flat on this device. So that's one of my biggest caveats on this. So the thing is that something that a lot of people don't necessarily always fall into this problem, but I caught myself falling into this problem, is the height that you have from the light table. This negative is right on that light table, and if you have a really thick negative, let's just say you're shooting out in the snow and you expose it right, that negative is going to be reflecting back into this light table, and you're going to have some major issues with blotchiness showing up in your negative. Now, this same negative, I did run into some blotchiness issues. However, according to the folks at Negative Supply, is that the distance off the frame or from the plane to the white table or the light table is high enough, and the problem that I'm seeing the blotchiness is probably because this prototype is silver and it's not absorbing light, so it's probably bouncing that light around. So an alternative option for this is to get a get a plate. So they do have the Mark Pro Mount 1, which this would mount onto a plate that would kind of bring that off the light table a little bit more, but not that much. So I'm still working on that. I'm still having some experience issues with that, but again, that is a very rare instance, especially we don't really get snow all that often in Georgia. So something to keep in mind on that. So there are a whole bunch of other options. This digitalizer, it's a $39 device. It is a very different user experience as opposed to having, you know, a knob here that you can turn. And, you know, I think that the overall experience with this is far better than this. I've been using this for a while, and I tend to stray with it and stray away from it, and I say, you know what, I'll just go over to the Frontier at Dunwoody Photo and get that knocked out. So let's dive into these images, and even though part of the review is to look at the flatness of the negative, we're going to be using Negative Lab Pro to do that conversion. So that conversion does not necessarily reflect on whether this thing did a good job or not, other than, you know, is the negative flat? Are we seeing any issues with straightness on that? So let's dive into it. All right, guys, so we have a few negatives here that we're going to go through. I'm not going to go through all of these because the process is going to be, I don't want to say long and tedious, but it is a bit of a process, and I'm not sure you guys want to sit here and watch me go through each one of these negatives. So I'm going to go and pick out a few that I think were some winners and some keepers, and then we'll kind of go through it, and then we'll just do some results. So let's dive into it. All right, so we're going to go and adjust for our white balance. So we pick out an area in the frame here, and then what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and crop this down for the 6.7 negative. Now Nate, the creator of and software designer of Negative Lab Pro, has said to leave a little bit of the border in there. Some people would kind of argue with saying, oh, you got to go all the way against it. But from what Nate has told me is that you kind of want to leave a little bit of space so that you can get that. So now we got our crop in, and now we're going to hit Control N. All right, border buffer, the default is 5%. I like using Noritsu's color profiles, so let's see what we get out of that. So let's convert the negative. Boom, there you are. So this is straight off the negative, no adjustments on there. So, you know, we can play around with the contrast levels here. We can play around with the whites, bring those whites back a little bit, bring in a little bit, make it a little bit darker. All right, and yeah, let's see here. So this was a Kodak film, so let's throw a Kodak profile on there. And it starts going a little bit more towards yellow. That's a traditional other, but I was really happy with this neutral color. So that is with that image. Cool. All right, so let's dive into a couple other ones. So I know there was one in here that I really liked. Yeah, this one. All right, cool. So let's do this one image really quick. So we'll do our conversion here. We're going to go ahead. We're going to get our crop in. All right, guys, well, that wraps it up for this review of the Negative Supply 120 Carrier. This is a fantastic device. I like it. I am a backer of it. It is an expensive device, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. There are other options out there. The user experience will be different. So you can get one of these right here, but you know what? Coming from one of these, I'm just not a fan, and I much more prefer the user experience from this. So that's just something to keep in mind. There are a lot of options out there, so give it a try. All right, guys, well, that wraps it up for this review. So if you really enjoyed this, please click the subscribe button anywhere around here. I don't know where they are. And check us out on Studio C41. Sign up on the newsletter. We're going to be having a lot of content that's going to be coming out. And I think you guys will really enjoy it. So until the next video, interview, review thing, please subscribe and shoot some film. Dang it.